Guys, welcome back to Quick Notes with Croissant. Today we're going to be talking about the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership by John C. Maxwell. We're going to be continuing our series of these irrefutable laws with law number 5, called the Law of E.F. Hutton. Now this one talks about basically when a leader speaks, he only speaks when he is heard, but specifically altering the way that you speak in general to speak in such a way that others love to listen to you, and listen in such a way that others love to speak to you. See, who E.F. Hutton is, he was a very, very successful stockbroker. It was so successful that he actually used to run ad campaigns, and these commercials used to involve this catchphrase, "When E.F. Hutton talks, people listen." And it essentially ended up creating this sort of movement where leaders and people who are worthwhile listening to are people that want to be heard. So specifically, leaders don't necessarily waste words on people that aren't listening. They speak in such a way and such conviction that they know that people are actually listening to what it is that they want to say. And that's the type of person that you want to become. Now, when it starts, I understand if you're a person who's not necessarily good at talking or communicating, that's fine. Just like any other skill, it's a development process. You have to look towards practicing through implementation, reflection, evaluation, and constantly looking towards putting yourself in situations where you can effectively communicate. So many young people who believe themselves to be leaders often walk so confidently into a room only to completely mistake who is the true leader. And they completely dismiss the situation of the leadership. So such an important aspect is understanding the people of influence in a room. So many people are so overly confident they'll enter a room thinking that charisma and just being loud and obnoxious is a sign of leadership, when in reality, as said in previous laws, leadership is influence. Nothing more, nothing less. And there are so many different aspects of that influence. There's real leaders who have real influence, and there's positional leaders who have influence based on their position. For example, a positional influence, they always speak first. They're the first persons to speak in a room. They need the influence of the real leader to actually get things done. If you've ever heard of secondhand leadership, it's basically where someone who has true leadership, true influence, someone who's genuinely someone who's worthwhile following, has appointed a person who doesn't necessarily have that status yet, and get people to do what they want because of the respect given by the real leader. These are positional leaders. Now, it doesn't mean that they can't develop into real ones, but understanding the difference of where you sit, who you are, and who you follow is very important towards the development of your own personal leadership. Finally, they only have influence over other positional leaders. And the reason that is because, genuinely speaking, positional leaders know their role. They understand that they're in their position to accomplish a certain goal. So that means when it comes to inspiring people, they lack that. But they do have the ability to talk to someone who does understand what they're looking to achieve to help them achieve it. Now that's not necessarily bad, but it isn't necessarily good either. Now a real leader, they speak last. They in fact only speak when they're looking towards influencing. So they only need their influence in itself to get things done. They don't need positional influence. They don't need anything other than their ability to inspire others in order to achieve what it is they're looking to accomplish. Finally, they have influence over everyone in the room. So many positional leaders or specific leaders, they only have specific influence over certain people. A real leader has the ability to inspire everyone. And I'm not saying that that's easy, but it is something that you can look towards striving for. So it's about understanding how it is to be in this power position, and understanding that when a leader speaks, a true leader speaks, people listen. But first, you need to be someone who people love talking to. In order to have that, you need to have a level of empathy, a level of understanding. No one cares what you have to say until they first know that you care. So if you can basically embody that quote and understand that you first need to care about people's problems before you can actually start talking about your own, then that can instantly put you in a situation where you're actually being heard. Because people love talking to people who let them speak. And in order to basically understand there's a difference between speaking and influence, it's the fact that you first know that you care. See, people are always going to be naturally influenced by an individual who always thinks or believes that that person has their best interest in mind. And that's the key foundational point of a leader, empathy. See, a leader is looking towards accomplish a team, and they prioritize their team's needs, wants, and accomplishments before their own. And only then are they looking towards achieve it. So their most valuable team, because they value keeping the organization together first, because they understand that if they have a solid organization, they have a solid teamwork and a solid team mindset in place, they can actually look towards accomplishing anything. The goal actually comes seconds towards developing the team, but do understand that a team needs to be formed with a common goal in mind, something that they're looking towards achieving. And success needs to be a prerequisite. And a prerequisite of success is influence. So understanding that everyone is falling in line, everyone is understanding what it is that they're looking towards achieving. There's no pecking order of people trying to overtake certain people. They understand that there is a real leader in place. That is the key towards success. Understand the difference between positional leaders and real leaders. A positional leader is someone like a manager. So they get default influence based on their position, but they're not truly inspiring. The difference is that a leader inspires others. You can judge a person's leadership ability by the amount of volunteers that they have from their employees or the people that they surround themselves with. If you're an individual that has a lot of people wanting to volunteer to help, that's an indication of you becoming a good leader. Because that's the true test on whether or not you're actually genuinely inspiring people. If people just want to help you because of the type of person you are. So if you work towards achieving that, then you can look towards achieving so many more things in life. Because if you go back to the quote how a lot of young, inexperienced leaders enter a room and completely misjudge the place and discover that they themselves are totally misjudged in terms of who the leadership dynamics are in this situation. The book goes towards talking about how when John was a younger appointed pastor at a church, he entered a room and he realized very quickly that although he was anointed the leader, no one was actually truly listening to him. In fact, they were listening to a person who was much more older than him. His name was Earl. Now, Earl actually genuinely it wasn't necessarily any positions, but he was such a natural leader that a lot of people looked towards him. In fact, when they were talking about the development of the church itself, a lot of ideas he put forward before John himself were instantly taken on board. So knowing that, John wasn't discouraged, John wasn't disheartened, he wasn't offended. All he basically did was pivot his demeanor, and he understood that if he could get the influence of Earl, then no matter what, his accomplishments would be achieved. See, so many leaders, they don't really care about recognition. Too many leaders care about the recognition of being the person on the pedestal. A true leader understands that influence is what the foundational point is in order towards achieving their goals. So they don't care about having a certain position or a title, because those are useless, those are meaningful. Those are meaningless. What's meaningful is the ability to influence. So knowing that, John ended up having one-on-one discussions with Earl. Started putting his ideas towards Earl before anyone else. And very soon, and very quickly, all the ideas that John wanted in order for the church to progress, grow, and expand, he actually shared in ideology. So what ended up happening is by default, he developed influence over the entire church group through first developing a relationship through Earl. This goes back to how a leader only speaks when he knows he's being listened to. And you want to be a person who speaks in such a way that people love to listen to you, and be a type of person who listens in such a way that people love to speak to you. And that's exactly what John understood. He fundamentally embodied that ideology. And he looked towards, okay, well, what's the most effective and efficient way to get my idea across? If our goal is to expand this church, if our goal is to expand this organization, what's the most efficient way? Because there's no point in bickering, there's no point in arguing. I'm going to talk to the person who has the most influence in private in order to basically effectively lead towards getting towards my goal. And that's the type of essentially mindset that you need to have. And it's so interesting how so many of these different laws that the book talks about, they fundamentally funnel through into all of themselves, because the law of E.F. Hutton also falls into the law of navigation. He had the forward projection to understand that he's wasting his words on trying to inspire everyone when he can just inspire the one true leader in the room before he himself proves himself through character, develops respect, through accomplishment, previous successes on navigation of the entirety of the church. Now, how can you relate that into your own business? Well, if you're an individual who's initially been put into a management position, understand that management doesn't mean leadership. Management just means that you're in charge of processing and systems. Just because you're an individual who's in that position of leader doesn't necessarily mean that you have influence over the team. But if you can talk to the person that you do understand is the true leader, because if the goal is influence, and then you have to do it in the most effective way. I've seen so many management positions where people fall into the power mentality. They need to have the title, when in truth, true leadership is influence. Nothing more, nothing less. So what is the most effective way that you can go about developing that within yourself, organization, to attain the goal that you're looking out to accomplish? So talk to the person with the most influence. If you can have that person on your side, then by default, you gain your influence, you gain your control, and basically advocating for achieving that goal. And nothing looks more, development of leadership through other than edification. So if you can get the trust, the value, and the cooperation of the true leader in the room, then edification happens. And edification is essentially promotion from someone else. And through promotion with someone else, the team grows. You can look towards accomplishing, progressing towards achieving the goal that you're looking towards accomplishing. Anyways, guys, that's it for Quick Notes with Croissant on the law of E.F. Hutton. But don't stop there. We're still continuing our series of the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership by John C. Maxwell. So I highly suggest you don't stop there. Keep looking at the other videos that we're going to have posted, looking towards putting yourself in a better improvement and position for success. I'll see you guys in the next one.